to another episode of Doodling Through Education. For my CC students, this is Cycle 1, Week 13, History. For everyone else, that just means that we are going to be talking about the Kingdom of Kush, as well as a little bit about the Berbers and African history. So if you haven't already, head on over to doodlingthrougheducation.com. There's a link in the description. You can buy worksheets and a workbook that goes along with these videos. There's 4 worksheets per week per subject, and it helps to further your learning on each of these topics in the Doodling Through Education videos. Now, without further ado, let's start doodling. So, let's talk about the Kingdom of Kush. Now, this was an ancient civilization in Africa and was located in the northeastern part of Africa and began as being the area just south of ancient Egypt. Now, some historians believe that Kush, who was Noah's grandson through his son Ham, settled in this area of Africa, which is present-day Sudan. Now, another name for this kingdom is Nubia. Nubia was a wealthy and rich kingdom. There was much gold, ivory, incense, and iron here. And another distinguishing feature of this region were that the people here were expert archers. And even so much so that the area became known as the land of the bow. Now, Nubia was an important place for the Egyptians as well, and it is believed that the Egyptians were the one who renamed it Kush. The main cities of Kush were naturally located along the Nile River, and there were 2 different capital cities at different times. The first capital was Napata. And Napata was located along the Nile River in northern Kush. This city served as the capital during the height of the Kush's power. But then, around 590 BC, the capital ended up moving to the city of Meroe. Now, Meroe was further south, which provided that buffer between the Kush and the Egyptians. The Kush and the Egyptians, because they were neighbors, naturally fought between them as well as traded between them. For example, in 1500 BC, Egypt actually conquered the Kush, but then in 750 BC, the Kushites were able to defeat Egypt. And that shows on the maps in this video. The area highlighted in yellow shows where the Kingdom of Kush was at the height of their empire. Now, after the Kushites were able to defeat the Egyptians, Egypt then fell under oppression of the Assyrians. And this forced the Kush to go back to its original area, which was south of Egypt. And it was at this time that they established their capital at Meroe. Now, it was also during this time that they began to refine iron. This area that their new capital was at was an area that was rich in iron ore deposits, and trade flourished in this area because this is where some major trade routes crossed. Now, it's natural that since the Kingdom of Kush and Egypt were close neighbors, and for some time the Kush ruled over Egypt, the culture, the government, and the religions were very similar to the Egyptians. One thing that the Kushites did that the Egyptians are well known for is they also built pyramids at their burial sites and mummified their dead, as well as worshipped the Egyptian gods. And truly, the ruling class of the Kush would consider themselves Egyptian in many ways. And like I said, the Kushites were able to refine iron, but another resource that was very important to them was gold. And gold is the resource that made the Kush become very wealthy because they were able to trade it with the Egyptians and nearby nations. Iron also made them wealthy because it was one of the most important metals of that age. It could make the strongest tools and weapons. The Kushite Empire began to decline in 168 BC. This is when Rome began overseeing Egypt and protecting them. Rome became a dominant force in trade and would compete with the Kushites' trade routes. In AD 350, the nation of Axum attacked Meroe, their capital city, and destroyed their city. And this is what brought the Kingdom of Kush to an end. Now, another group of people were living in northern Africa during this period of time, and these were the Berbers. They lived in North Africa, and they got their name from the ancient Romans who called them Berbers. They lived in the far northwestern part of Africa and typically lived in the mountainous regions and in the desert. They were key players in trade routes during the Middle Ages. And this was due to their nomadic lifestyle, which allowed them to control trade from West Africa all the way across the Sahara and up into the Mediterranean and into Europe and the Middle East. The Berbers were excellent at their job. They transported a variety of goods, which included gold, salt, ivory, slaves, and even shells between West Africa and the sub-Saharan regions. They were known for their navigation skills and their ability to survive in the desert. They were able to develop many sophisticated methods of desert travel, which included using camels and establishing trade routes that had resting points at water sources. They had caravans that could be as small as 1,000 camels or as large as 12,000 camels. And the Berbers also played a large role in the spread of Islam across Africa because they often traded with Muslim merchants and then brought that Islamic culture and religion back to their communities. And that's all we have for today. So be sure to do those 4 worksheets in the history workbook found on doodlingthrougheducation.com. There's some fill in the blank exercises as well as some map work in this week's worksheets. And on that note, remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.